Letter to Paul Simon. Do people still send fan mail? Fan mail? Letter to Paul Simon. Do people still send fan mail? Is there a way? Is there an address? I found out recently that Paul Simon grew up 20 minutes up the road from me in Forest Hills, and it made my heart stop and tears well up, which was interesting because a year ago I didn't know who Paul Simon was. And now a Queen's Chronicle article has me in tears over a black and white photo of this little boy and a good friend 21 minutes up the road from me. I wonder how he feels about all of this. Nothing, I assume. After a life of touching hearts, you probably realize other people's hearts are none of your business. It would probably be exhausting to hear and fathom the amount of love you've spurred up in the world if you were Paul Simon. I have to wonder. I'm sure everyone has a beautiful story of how Graceland came into their lives. Please bear with me for mine. It was August of last year when I spontaneously went to see a horror movie in theaters. I'd never do this, but I did, and accidentally left my Bluetooth earbuds on the floor of the theater, which I took to be a sign and some sort of blessing. It turned out that I was right, because for my birthday, a couple of weeks later, my mom sent me a portable cassette player in shockingly good condition with some of the cassettes from her collection as a young adult, notably Graceland by Paul Simon. At this point, I didn't know anything about Graceland, or Paul Simon, or cassettes in general. I went on some errand far away in the city and brought Graceland with me, and my whole world blew open. I must have listened to it 6 times all the way through that day, methodically popping the tape out and turning it from side A to side B. There were certain parts of it that hit my heart specifically, like how I'd studied abroad in southern Africa and felt a sort of homesickness in the major chords and Bantu accented vocals, or how my mom must have also been heartbroken one day, looking out the window of a train and thinking, wow, losing love is just like a window in your heart, and then looking around, everyone can see you're blown apart. It was The Boy in the Bubble that I kept circling back to. It was everything I wanted a song to be. It was some example of excellence, the most delicious meal I could eat again and again when I flipped from side B to side A. If anything, I'd just like to write Paul Simon to thank him for The Boy in the Bubble. Because this 27th year, I've needed a few never-ending meals. Like people in old religious stories seem to always need candles and long periods of dark. That will have been the last birthday with my dad alive. I wonder if I'd tell Paul Simon. If my heart is of no concern to him, then maybe I wouldn't. I mention it now because I just saw my mother. It's been almost 5 months since my dad died, since we gathered around him day after day, singing for him and laughing and crushing his pills into syringes. She sat down in a Montana burger restaurant in front of me and said, if she was supposed to be a caregiver, then she must have failed, and broke both of our hearts when she said it. I told her she gave, my dad, the most care, the best care anyone could ask for. In his last weeks, we taped pictures of him everywhere, from different parts of his life, growing up in Colorado, shooting squirrels in Arkansas, his first elementary school class as a teacher in Minnesota, his travels in Botswana and the Peace Corps, and then again, nearly 30 years later, visiting me. We watched home videos together in The Lord of the Rings and spooned him up some home-canned peaches and root beer floats. Of course, I wouldn't tell Paul Simon any of this, and of course, my mom remembered it. She'd just spent that time so singularly focused that she'd forgotten herself moving through it, and now needed some time to settle into the pain that underscores every sweet and strong act of love, love, love when you're helpless in trying to help and someone is dying. So my mom and I went from the burger restaurant south to the Yellowstone border, where we would explore for the weekend. It was my mom's 9th trip out, and technically my 3rd, though the last time I came to Yellowstone, it was for a summer job, so I wasn't sure how to count it. We both missed the place. It felt like freedom between those trees. This time around, music played a huge role in our experience of Yellowstone. Maybe because it was raining the majority of our trip, or maybe because we were older and forever changed by my dad's death, but we listened to much more music. On one day, after our plans were changed and changed again by the weather gods, we drove from Canyon to West Yellowstone, listening to Graceland. My mom lit up with recognition when I played it for her. She asked how I did it, no Wi-Fi or cassette player in the car, and I showed her a downloaded YouTube playlist. We bounced along to Call Me Al and sat in bison traffic through Homeless. At the end, there was a clip of Paul Simon talking about the process behind the song Graceland, how it was this mere reflection of South African impressions of country music and the universality of a traveling song. All around the world, we need to be getting somewhere. My mom turned to me and said, "Wow, Paul Simon is a real musician." He really is, the best of the best, thoughtful in every inch of his music. Would I tell him that? He knows, of course he knows. He's been inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, I think. He must know. So, on the last day of the trip, I'd saved another album. You know, I'd been totally shunned from at a speed dating event once for not realizing that the Simon in Simon and Garfunkel was Paul Simon. I think it showed my age or something. I'm not ashamed. You only know what you know. I'd heard of Simon and Garfunkel when Ada from 3rd grade sang Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme for the school talent show, but that was a folk song, which came from nowhere and everyone, so I wasn't sure who these people, Simon or Garfunkel, had to do with it. All that being said, on our last day, we drove in the dipping sun through Lamar Valley, through an expansive feeling I wish I could lean on Paul Simon to describe. I began to play Bridge Over Troubled Water. I'm not sure I'd ever heard that song. If you haven't, may I recommend a drive to Yellowstone. The purple of the sagebrush, the hundreds of bison dotting the hills, the greens, they all came stirring to life at the sound of it. The melody lilts like it's succumbing to a particularly warm sun ray, and then burst open like becoming the sun itself. Maybe when my dad died, a piece of me laid down with him. Maybe I tried to be a bridge for troubled waters I could never cover up. Whatever had been true before, there was something about that drive that woke me up. Chords that stirred me like the colors and lit me less like a candle and more like the sun. And if I only knew how to reach Paul Simon, I would tell him so. I would thank him for giving us that moment in Graceland and reminding me why we might live on.